Back to school season is here and there is so much to do. Welcome back to Special Educators Resource Room podcast. This is Jennifer from Positively Learning. This episode is important. I feel kind of bad recording this. In fact, I've tried a few times. This is not the first time I've recorded this. Why do I feel bad? Well, I want to tell you all of the things I would not recommend prepping before the first day of school. And I would assume that many people listening to this have already prepped many of these things. And I am not here to make you feel bad. And if you haven't prepped, I'm not here to make you feel behind. I just want to explain what I think is going to be the most important. And I'm going to explain why as we go through it. So I'm not going to just hand you a to-do list or hand you a list of things not to do. We're going to talk about it. Grab your coffee or favorite beverage because we're about to get into it. Let's start with the prep spiral. So a lot of you might be living this right now. You have a car full of bins. You have a saved folder with 40 ideas in it. You have a laminator that hasn't cooled off in 3 days. Maybe you have a classroom that's going to look incredible on the first day of school because it took some of your free hours last weekend to build. Now, I'm not telling you to go do that, or I'm not telling you that you're behind. I want to talk about what's actually going to determine how the first few weeks of school with your students are going to go. Not because you did anything wrong, but because we might be prepping for a classroom that you haven't met yet. You don't know this group's personality. You don't know which visuals they're going to need and which ones are going to just be wallpaper by October. You don't know real transition times, real energy levels, real how are we going to make this work specifics for this classroom. All that information is only going to happen after school starts. Here's the pattern that I see almost every single August. A teacher spends her last free weekend building something beautiful and complete. And then the first week of school happens. And half of what she built either doesn't get used the way she planned or gets rebuilt within 2 weeks anyway, because now she knows the group. Those hours are not wasted exactly, but they might have been spent on the wrong version of the work. So the classroom that we imagined doesn't match up with the classroom we're about to meet. And I don't say this to make anyone feel behind or feel bad. I say it because a lot of us were taught somewhere along the way that this all needed to be completed before students ever walked through the door. Maybe you were even told those exact words. Hopefully this advice is going to meet you at the right time and is going to be helpful. The 3 things that I do not recommend prepping before day 1 and why. Number 1, a full year of bulletin boards and theme decor. This is the one that can take up so much of your time. And it is also the one with the least payoff on day 1. We want to build the walls you're actually going to need for week 1. Maybe that's a visual schedule, a finished work spot, maybe a welcoming display. Everything else can wait until you know this group. Think about what a bulletin board is actually for. It's not decoration, or at least it shouldn't be. A good bulletin board is either teaching something, communicating a routine, or my personal favorite, displaying student work. I loved to set up my boards. I put the border up before school starts, but then I'd put those placeholders saying, amazing work coming soon. And then I'd replace it pretty quickly in the first week or 2 with students' work. I have a podcast episode way back when talking about how I actually used this to keep work samples, and it worked so well for us. You cannot know what routine is going to need a visual anchor yet, or what work is worth displaying before you've spent a single day or week with this particular group of students. So a fully decorated room before school starts is often decorating for a classroom that doesn't exist yet. Number 2, this one's going to take some explaining and could probably be its own podcast episode. Number 2, I don't recommend prepping individualized systems and modifications for any students you haven't met yet. Now, if you've met them, that might be different. And I know a lot of you probably spent part of your summer reading IEPs, and I don't want you to hear this as don't prepare for them. Reading the paperwork matters. But an IEP is going to tell you what a student needs on paper. It doesn't tell you how that student moves through the classroom, what actually helps them regulate, or which task format is going to click. If we built every individualized system before we observed a student in your actual classroom, you're often going to be building the wrong version of the right support. So what do we do instead? We want to have enough flexibility on that first day where everyone can have access. And then in the second week or so, we can start individualizing it once we have that real information instead of just the paper information. Here's a concrete example. Let's say a student's IEP mentions difficulty with transitions. On paper, that could mean a lot of different things. It could mean that they'd benefit from a visual timer. It could mean that a first then card really helps them. It could mean that they need a verbal cue a few minutes before a change is going to occur, or a specific person to walk with them, or a preferred item to carry between spaces. You don't know which of those this particular student needs until you watch transitions actually happen. And if we spent summer building a transition system based on a very educated guess, you may end up rebuilding it in a week or two anyway, except now you've used up hours you didn't have to spare. Number 3, the third thing I don't recommend prepping until the first day or week of school is a schedule with every single minute mapped out before you know your real transition times. I know this happens every August. Happened to me. You're sitting there looking at a blank schedule template, and you have to pretty much guess how it's going to work. You don't know how long your specific group is actually going to be able to work independently. You don't know real bathroom timing, real hallway timing, real how long is it going to take us to get to lunch with this group timing. What we want to do is build a schedule with room to move in it. And then we can lock in a final version in a week 2 or week 3 once you've lived it a few real days. I want to be specific about what room to move actually looks like in your schedule, because it's not the same as being open-ended or being vague. I recommend writing your schedule in time blocks instead of exact minutes whenever you can. So for example, independent work, 20 to 30 minutes instead of independent work, 9:47 to 10:15. We want to build in 1 or 2 unlabeled times that you can flex in either direction, early or late. And we want to resist the urge to fill every single minute before day 1. A schedule with a little give in it is not a less professional schedule. It's just a more honest one. Those are my 3 recommendations, but I know it can look different across classrooms. And I know we have self-contained teachers, inclusion teachers, we have related service providers. Everything might look a little different in each setting. If you're in a self-contained classroom, this might mean resisting the urge to have every station fully built and labeled before you've seen how your specific group moves through the room. So you do want to build the stations you need for the first week, like arrival, independent work, maybe one small group spot, but then you want to let the rest of the room fill in as you learn more about your group. If you're in a resource room, this might mean not building a fully individualized folder system for every single student on your caseload before you've had a single session with them. Instead, we could have a more flexible folder structure that can hold whatever's coming in. And then we can start personalizing the contents once you know each student's actual starting point. And if you're pushing into inclusion classrooms, this might mean you're not going to be finalizing exactly how you're going to support each student in each setting before you've observed those settings with this year's schedule and this year's teachers. We want to walk in with a flexible plan for how we're going to offer support, not a locked plan for exactly what the support will look like minute to minute. Different settings, but the same idea. We want to build the frame, but all of those details are going to come from real observation instead of trying to figure it out or guess before the school year starts. Now, if you take those 3 things that we talked about off your list, you're going to get some real time back. So here's where I would put that time. First, you want one ready to go independent work system for week 1, not the whole year of tasks, just enough for that day 1, day 2, day 3 that have something students can start work through, and finish without needing you to build it on the fly. The second thing, you want one simple routine that you can actually teach, not just post on the wall. A visual schedule matters less than whether you've planned for how you're going to teach it to students. Ask yourself on day one, am I going to be walking with students through this routine step by step? Or am I going to let the poster on the wall do the teaching for me? The poster never does the teaching. It just reinforces it. You're doing the teaching the first several times, and then the routine can start to hold on its own. The third thing I recommend is you want to have some type of plan to observe and capture notes during the first 2 weeks. And I'm not talking notes that you're going to type up formally. It might be a sticky note. It might be you talking into a voice memo, something to capture your notes instead of having this plan with everything locked in advance. The information you're going to get from actually watching your class in real time is going to be worth so much more than anything we could have figured out in July. I'd even suggest keeping a small running list, a notes app, sticky note, whatever's easiest, of what you're noticing about transitions, about students' independent work stamina, where students are getting stuck. That list is going to become the real foundation for everything you're going to build in weeks 2 and 3. And the fourth one, and this one's easy to skip. You want to build in some time for yourself before that first day arrives. If you freed up the hours you would have spent building a full year of decor, all your bulletin boards, some of those hours should come back to you. A sustainable school year starts with a teacher who didn't spend all her free time prepping the classroom. I like to finish podcast episodes with action steps, and this week's has 2 parts to it. Part 1 is to pick one thing on your prep list that's only there as a just in case. Maybe it's an extra binder you are going to prep. Maybe it's a themed bulletin board. Maybe it's a modification for a student you haven't observed yet. And please take that off your list entirely. Part 2, that time you just saved in part 1, I want you to put it into one thing instead. Maybe it's your independent work system for week 1, just enough for the first few days. Has a clear start, a clear middle, a clear finish. So students actually have something to do while you're doing everything else that day 1 requires. If you're listening to this thinking, I'm not exactly sure what I should choose, here's 3 questions about anything that is still sitting on your prep list. Number 1, is this for the classroom I'm about to meet or the classroom I imagined? Number 2, will I actually know more about this in 2 weeks than I know right now? And number 3, if I set this task aside until week 2, is anything going to break down? If the answer to that last one is no, it is safe to wait. I hope we can still be friends after listening to this episode. Have a wonderful week. I will be back next week with what your students actually need to learn during those first 2 weeks. I also highly recommend going back to the August episodes from previous years. I've given out so much information about building skeleton systems. When all that paperwork is coming at you, it will have a place to go. I also have episodes all about exactly what to do on the first day and the first week of school. Thanks so much for listening. I'll catch you next time in the Special Educators Resource Room. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'm dying to ask, what'd you think? Be sure to hit the follow or subscribe buttons so that you never miss an episode. You can find the show notes and links for everything mentioned in this episode at positivelylearningblog.com. See you next week for more special education solutions.